The ceasefire is extended. So why did oil just jump to $98 a barrel? Because the headline sounds peaceful, but the plumbing of the global economy still looks dangerous. And when the plumbing breaks, the pressure shows up everywhere. At the port, on the tanker, at the refinery, at the gas station, and finally, in your budget. So today, I want to walk you through what I'm calling the ceasefire trap. This is the kind of trap that fools investors, confuses consumers, and punishes anyone who thinks a softer headline means lower prices tomorrow morning. President Trump has extended the truce indefinitely, but he also made clear the US military will continue the blockade of Iranian ports. That means the bombs may pause, but the financial chokehold does not. And that creates a two-sided squeeze, a cash squeeze for Iran and a price squeeze for Americans. Today, I'll show you why gas prices are not likely to fall quickly, why inflation just took a dangerous turn, and the 3 mentor moves I think ordinary investors should make right now. Let's start with the first truth. A ceasefire stops the bombs. A blockade stops the money. That distinction matters because wars are not fought only with missiles. They are fought with shipping lanes, storage capacity, insurance contracts, sanctions pressure, and access to cash flow. That is where the real economic damage compounds. Trump's public message was simple. He said the ceasefire would continue while Iran tries to produce a unified proposal, but the blockade stays in place. So if you are looking for a full return to normal oil trade, that is not what was announced. And that is why markets did not celebrate this like a clean peace deal, because it is not a clean peace deal. It is a pause in kinetic warfare paired with an ongoing attack on revenue. Now, the administration's pressure campaign is aimed directly at Iran's oil income. CNN reported that Iran accounts for roughly 4% of world oil supply, and analysts cited by CNN noted that blocking Iranian exports cuts off a crucial source of government funding. Reuters' era Logic would call this a supply story, but it is also a treasury story. Trump also claimed Iran is losing $500 million a day because of the blockade. Now, as a mentor, I want to be precise here. That figure is Trump's claim. Forbes noted the article did not present an independent verification of that exact number, so we should treat it as a pressure point message from the White House, not as a fully audited cash flow statement. But even if you discount the exact figure, the strategic message is obvious. The blockade is designed to starve the regime of export revenue. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the pressure is aimed at Iran's primary revenue lifelines and warned that vessels helping move those flows risk sanctions exposure. And look at what is happening around the waterway itself. CBS reported that the U.S. fired on and seized an Iranian container ship over the weekend. In the same reporting cycle, the MSC Francesca and the Epaminondas were identified as vessels stopped near Iran, and the IRGC said they were intercepted and escorted to the Iranian coast. So the message to the market is brutal. Ships are still being challenged, crews are still nervous, traffic is still under threat, and the lane that moves a massive share of global energy is still behaving like a war zone with a temporary timeout. That is the first part of the trap. People hear ceasefire and think normalization, but normalization does not begin until money, shipping, and insurance begin to normalize too, and that has not happened.
Now, let's talk about your gas station, because this is where the ceasefire trap becomes personal. A lot of people assume gas prices only rise when missiles are flying. That is not how this works. Gas prices also rise when fear gets priced into logistics. And fear is absolutely still priced in. Insurance is the clearest example. Al Jazeera reported that major marine insurers canceled war risk coverage for vessels in the Gulf, forcing ship owners to seek new policies at much higher cost. Premiums reportedly jumped from around 0.2% of ship value to as high as 1% in just days. The World Economic Forum went even further. It said major maritime insurers have suspended or repriced war risk coverage, and that the Lloyd's high risk designation expanded to the entire Persian Gulf. That is not a market saying, relax. That is a market saying, we still do not trust this route. And remember where this route is. The Strait of Hormuz carries about 1/5 of global oil supply.
If moving energy through that choke point becomes more expensive, delayed, or more dangerous, those costs do not vanish. They travel. They travel into shipping rates, then wholesale fuel costs, then refining economics, then retail pump prices. That is the domino line. So even without missiles in the air, the market still prices in the possibility of renewed disruption. One attack, one seizure, one insurance withdrawal, one convoy delay. That is enough to keep a risk premium inside every barrel. And this is where the old gas price rule comes back. Prices go up like a rocket. They come down like a feather. That phrase matters because it explains the consumer frustration perfectly. Oil can stabilize, the headlines can cool off, and yet your local station can still lack because retailers are working through higher cost inventory, because wholesalers remain cautious, because everyone in the chain wants protection against the next shock. CNBC reported that average U.S. gasoline prices moved above $4 a gallon again, with consumers paying about $4.12 on average in early April. That was the first breach of that threshold since 2022. So when people ask, why aren't prices dropping already? The answer is simple, because the war premium did not leave. It just changed clothes. That is the price squeeze for Americans. You may get fewer scary headlines, but you are still paying wartime pricing at the pump.
Now, we get to the part Wall Street cannot ignore, the inflation pivot. The latest BLS report showed the energy index is up 12.5% over the 12 months ending in March. That is the headline number you need to remember. Not 2%, not flat, not easing, 12.5%. And it gets worse when you open the hood. The same report said gasoline rose 18.9% over the year. Fuel oil rose 44.2%. Gasoline alone jumped 21.2% in a single month, the largest monthly increase since that series began in 1967. That is not background noise. That is inflation taking the microphone back. And when energy inflation surges like that, the Federal Reserve has a problem because lower rates become harder to justify. If the Fed cuts too early while energy shocks are still feeding through the economy, those higher prices can spread into transportation, food, services, and consumer expectations. Reuters reported that Fed Vice Chair Philip Jefferson said sustained higher energy prices could worsen inflation and slow consumer and business spending. That is a nasty combination. Higher prices, slower spending, more policy stress. Fed Governor Christopher Waller made the warning even sharper. He said the longer energy prices stay elevated and the strait remains constrained, the greater the chance inflation gets embedded across a wide range of goods and services. And he said that may mean maintaining the policy rate where it is if inflation risks outweigh labor market risks. That is why this matters to people who don't own a single barrel of oil, because higher for longer does not stop at the Fed building. It hits your household. Reuters reported the average 30-year mortgage rate rose to 6.46% in early April, its highest since early September, as the war pushed up oil prices, inflation fears, and bond yields. That is real pain for homebuyers. It shrinks affordability fast. And in autos, CNBC reported a record 22.9% of financed new car purchases in the first quarter carried loan terms of 84 months or longer. That tells you households are already stretching. They're trying to make monthly payments fit in a world where rates and prices are both too high. So here is the full picture. The cash squeeze hits Iran through blocked exports. The price squeeze hits Americans through fuel and transport. And the rate squeeze hits everyone who needs financing. That is the April pivot. So what do we do with this? We do not panic. We do not guess. And we do not live inside breaking news adrenaline. We make mentor moves. Calm, practical, risk-aware, and immediate. Mentor move 1. Hedge with energy ETFs. If your household budget is vulnerable to fuel spikes, consider whether a small, disciplined hedge in energy exposure makes sense. Not a gamble, not a YOLO trade, a hedge. For some investors, that can mean researching diversified energy ETFs or broad energy sector funds, so that when fuel costs rise, at least one corner of the portfolio has a chance to offset some of that pain. Position size matters, liquidity matters, and if you do not understand the fund, you do not own the fund. Mentor move 2.
Reduce variable rate debt immediately. This one is not glamorous. It is powerful. If you have variable rate debt, start attacking it now. Home equity balances tied to floating rates, variable rate personal loans, credit card debt, anything exposed to a higher for longer rate environment. Because when inflation reaccelerates, the Fed does not hand out relief. It waits, and your interest meter keeps running. If you are shopping for a car, be extra careful. CNBC's reporting shows buyers are already being pushed into 7-year loans just to make the monthly payment work. That is a warning sign, not a solution. A stretched payment can become a trapped payment very quickly. Mentor Move 3. Watch April 29th tech earnings like a market landmine. The next landmine is not only in oil, it may be in earnings. Late April tech reports matter because they will tell the market whether big growth names can keep carrying indexes while energy costs, financing costs, and macro uncertainty all rise in the background. Yahoo Finance noted that a major cluster of big tech reports is due in this window, with Google, Meta, and Microsoft reporting Wednesday, followed by Amazon and Apple on Thursday. When the market is already nervous about inflation and rates, one disappointing guide on cloud spending, AI capex, or consumer demand can hit sentiment much harder than usual. So don't watch those earnings like entertainment. Watch them like risk signals. Are margins holding? Are cloud budgets slowing? Are consumers trading down? Is management getting more cautious? That is where the next repricing can begin. Let's close this out the right way. The ceasefire trap is dangerous because it invites people to relax too early. It gives you a peaceful headline with an expensive reality underneath it. Yes, the bombs may be paused, but the blockade is still active. Insurance is still distorted. Energy inflation is already here, and the Fed still has every reason to stay cautious. So if you came into this video hoping for one simple message, here it is. Do not live in the headlines. Live in your spreadsheet. Track your fuel costs. Stress test your debt. Know which rates can reset. Know how much cash you need. Know what part of your portfolio benefits when energy surges. And know where the next market landmine sits on the calendar. Because in a wartime economy, hope is not a strategy. Preparation is the strategy. And preparation is the only way to survive a wartime economy. Don't live in the headlines. Live in your spreadsheet. Preparation is the only way to survive a wartime economy.